Princess Lyra sat in the grand hall, her eyes fixed on the polished floor. The voices of the alien nobles filled the chamber deep, proud, and cold. They spoke of her weaknesses as though she was not sitting right there. She was too small, too fragile, too soft-spoken. Their words cut like knives, each rejection sharper than the last. Her people, the carrion, valued strength above all else. The males of her kind were tall and broad, their bodies built for war and power. But Lyra was different. She had been born small, delicate, her frame unfit for their brutal contests. Because of that, she was seen as unworthy of attention, unworthy of alliance, unworthy even of kindness. One by one, the suitors walked away, leaving her alone in the vast room. The golden throne behind her felt colder than stone. When the last of them left, the silence was unbearable. Lyra pressed her hands together, trying to steady her breath. No one wanted her. Not for herself. Not even for power. That was when she first noticed the human. Daniel stood at the edge of the chamber, watching. He had no royal robe, no gleaming armor. His clothes were simple, travel-worn, and his boots carried the dust of distant worlds. His eyes, unlike the others, were not filled with scorn. He looked at her as though she mattered. Lyra turned her face away quickly, ashamed of her tears. Yet she could not forget the way he had looked at her, not with pity, but with something else, something she could not name. The days that followed were heavy. She walked through the palace gardens alone, her steps slow among the silver-leafed trees. The sky above shimmered with 2 suns, yet the light brought her no warmth. She thought of what the council had said. No one will take her. She is, too, weak to rule. Their voices echoed in her mind. Why did weakness matter more than her dreams? She longed to see the galaxy, to lead with kindness instead of cruelty, to show her people that strength was not the only path. But those thoughts felt like fragile wings, clipped before they could ever lift her. And yet, the human returned. Daniel found her sitting by the fountain, her hands resting in her lap. He did not bow like the others had. He did not boast of ships or wealth. He simply sat near her, leaving space but close enough that she could feel his presence. "You looked sad in the hall," he said gently. His voice was rough but warm, the voice of someone who had lived much and seen more. Lyra blinked in surprise. No one had asked about her feelings before. They only spoke of alliances, of duties, of what she lacked. "Why do you care?" she asked, her voice trembling. Daniel shrugged, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Because you're a person, and people matter." Her chest tightened. Simple words, yet they broke through the wall of silence she had built around herself. She did not know what to say, so she looked down again. The days turned into weeks. Daniel did not leave. He walked with her in the gardens. He listened when she spoke of the stars she dreamed of seeing. He asked questions about her childhood, her hopes, her fears. Lyra had never known such attention. Not the kind that measured her worth, but the kind that made her feel seen. Slowly, she began to laugh. Again. A quiet laugh, soft as the wind, but it was hers. Still, doubt lingered. Why would a human, a wanderer with no title or home, care for a princess the galaxy had rejected? She asked him one night as they watched the twin suns set. Why stay by? "My side?" she whispered. Daniel leaned back, looking at the horizon. "Because I've been where you are. I know what it's like to feel small, to feel like no one wants you. But I also know that's not the truth. Sometimes it just takes one person to remind you." His words stayed with her long after he left that night, but the council grew restless. They saw Daniel as a distraction, a weakness. "He is nothing," they said. "A human wanderer cannot be a companion for a princess. Send him away." Lyra's heart clenched with fear. She did not want him to leave. He was the only one who looked at her without judgment, the only one who saw her as more than her frailty. Yet she was afraid to speak, afraid that if she admitted how much his presence meant to her, he would vanish. So she stayed silent. And Daniel, perhaps sensing her fear, did not press. He simply stayed, offering his quiet strength. One night, as stars filled the sky, Lyra sat alone on the palace balcony. The vastness above reminded her of her dreams she thought she could never reach. A single tear slipped down her cheek. She whispered into the night, "Why am I never enough?" And a voice answered, "You are more than enough." Daniel stepped from the shadows. He had been looking for her, worried she had gone alone into the night. He moved closer, his gaze steady. "You don't see it yet?" he said softly. "But I do. You're stronger than you know. Not because of muscle or size, but because of what's in here." He touched his chest. "Your heart. That's something no one else can measure." Her tears flowed freely then, but they were no longer only tears of sorrow. They were something else, hope. For the first time in her life, someone had welcomed her, not for what she lacked or what she could offer, but simply for who she was. Every alien male had refused this small alien princess, but a human welcomed her. The night Daniel spoke those words, Princess Lyra felt something she had never felt before. Hope. His voice echoed in her heart. "You are more than enough." For days afterward, she walked with lighter steps. She looked at the stars not as unreachable lights, but as places she might one day see. But happiness, fragile as it was, did not. Daniel was a wanderer, a human who never stayed in one place for long. He had no land, no palace, no duty to the Carrion people. His life was in the stars, moving from world to world, never tied down. One morning he came to her with a heavy look in his eyes. "I have to leave for a while," he said. The words hit her like cold steel. Lyra's lips parted, but no sound came. Leave? Why? He had just become the one light in her lonely world. "There are people I need to help," he explained, his voice steady but gentle. "I promised them long before I met you. I can't break that promise." Lyra forced herself to nod, though inside her chest something broke. "Of course," she whispered. "I understand." But when he walked away, her heart cried out. The days without Daniel were long and heavy. The palace felt emptier than before. The garden, once a place of laughter and quiet conversation, became a reminder of absence. The silver-leafed trees whispered in the wind, but their voices only deepened her loneliness. Everywhere she went, she felt the silence he left behind. The nobles noticed her sadness. Some mocked her. "See, even the human has abandoned her." Others whispered that she was foolish to have let him matter at all. She did not answer them. Instead, she carried their words like stones inside her heart. But when she sat by the fountain, she remembered his eyes, steady, warm, full of belief. "You're stronger than you know." If he believed it, perhaps it could be true. Lyra tried to live as he had taught her. She rose earlier, training her body, though it was not strong. She studied maps of the stars, learning the names of worlds far away. She spoke more in the council, forcing her quiet voice to rise. But every night, when the twin suns set, the loneliness returned. She missed the sound of his laugh, the way he listened as though her words mattered, the simple presence that made her feel less alone. She wanted to see him again, to tell him that she was trying, that his words had not been forgotten, but she did not know how. The galaxy was vast. Humans were wanderers. What if he never came back? Weeks turned into months. Letters from far-off places arrived in the palace, requests for trade, warnings of pirates, messages of war. But none came from Daniel. Each day, without word, felt like a storm cloud growing heavier above her head. She would walk to the balcony at night and whisper into the stars. Are you still out there? Do you remember me? And though no answer came, she held on to a fragile thread of hope, because he was human. And humans, she was learning, had something rare, a stubbornness that did not let go. If he had promised he would return, then maybe, just maybe, he would keep it. Her chance to prove her hope came sooner than she thought. One evening, a palace alarm sounded. A pirate fleet had slipped past the Empire's border defenses. They raided villages near the capital, burning homes, capturing the weak. The council panicked. The great generals argued over who should act. Lyra stood in the council chamber, her hands trembling. In the past, she would have stayed silent, unseen. But Daniel's words rose in her memory. Sometimes it just takes one person to remind you. She stepped forward. Enough, she said. Her voice cracked at first, but then grew stronger. While you argue, our people suffer. Send me. I will go to them. The council erupted in outrage. You? You cannot even protect yourself, one shouted. This is no task for a fragile princess. But Lyra lifted her chin. Then I will. Go anyway. If I am too weak to lead, then let me at least stand beside those who suffer. I will not hide while others bleed. Silence fell. For the first time, they looked at her not as a burden, but as someone willing to act. The mission was small and dangerous. Lyra rode with only a few guards to the villages, her heart pounding with fear. She had never left the safety of the palace. Yet she pressed on. When she arrived, the destruction was worse than she had imagined. Homes smoldered, families wept, children hid in the ruins. Lyra's throat tightened, but she forced herself to walk among them. She offered words of comfort, shared what little supplies she had, and promised that they would not be forgotten. Her guards whispered among themselves. This was not the weak. The smoke from the burned villages still hung in the air when Princess Lyra returned to the palace. The ride home was quiet. Her guards spoke little, but their eyes had changed. They no longer looked at her as a burden. They looked at her with respect. Yet inside, her heart was not calm. She had walked among her people, seen their pain, and for the first time in her life, she had stood in front of danger. She had done it because she believed Daniel would have done the same. His voice had guided her when fear almost crushed her. But when the palace walls came into view, loneliness settled on her shoulders once more. She wanted him there to see what she had done, to hear her say, I tried because of you. Instead, the halls echoed with silence. That night, Lyra sat by her balcony, the stars wide above her. She thought of Daniel. Was he still alive? Did he think of her, even for a moment? She imagined him laughing somewhere far away, telling stories in a dusty tavern, or helping strangers in some forgotten outpost. The thought made her smile, but then the smile faded. What if he never came back? What if she was only a passing moment? In his wandering life, her chest ached. She whispered into the night, Daniel, where are you? The stars gave no answer. Days turned into weeks. She kept busy, meeting with the council, studying maps, learning skills she once thought were impossible for her. Each time the nobles doubted her, she answered with calm determination. They had begun to see her differently, but still, their whispers never stopped. She only pretends it's strength. She is still too weak. She will never rule. Their words pierced her, but she no longer bowed her head. Instead, she remembered Daniel's steady gaze, his voice saying, You are more than enough. It was strange how a human she had known for only a short time could become the fire that kept her alive. But that was what made her feel so distant now. She wanted to see him again, to feel that warmth in person. Hope was strong, but it was not the same as his presence. One evening, a message arrived from a distant outpost. It was a fragment of a human voice. broken by static. Lyra's heart raced as she held the crystal that carried the sound. The words were unclear, but she swore she heard his name, Daniel. She listened again and again until the message faded. Was it truly him? Or was her heart only hearing what it wished? She pressed the crystal to her chest. If it was him, then he was alive. If it was him, then maybe, just maybe, he was trying to reach her. But how could she answer? How could she find him in the endless galaxy? The distance between them felt as wide as the stars themselves. That night, sleep would not come. She walked alone through the gardens, the silver leaves shining under the moons. She thought of the times Daniel had walked with her there. His voice, his laughter, the way he had simply listened. Now, there was only silence. She felt the weight of it pressing on her chest. The sadness she had tried to bury rose again, sharp and heavy. "I wish you were here," she whispered. "I wish I could tell you what you mean to me." "I wish—" Her voice broke, but she forced herself to keep speaking. "I will not give up. I will not stop hoping. If there is even the smallest chance, I will wait, because you welcomed me when no one else did. And I cannot forget that." Her tears fell silently, but in her heart, hope still burned. The next day, she threw herself into her duties. She met with village leaders, listened to their needs, and worked to rebuild what had been destroyed. She gave orders not with cruelty, but with care. Slowly, people began to trust her. Yet every evening, when the work was done, the loneliness returned. She looked at the stars and wondered where he was. Sometimes she doubted. What if he had forgotten her? What if he never planned to return? But each time doubt came, she remembered his eyes. Humans, she had learned, carried something rare. They were stubborn. They did not break promises easily. So she held on. Weeks passed into months again. Her people began to whisper new words. "The princess has changed. She is not weak as we thought." But inside, she still longed for the human who had seen her before anyone else did. One night, as she stood by the balcony, a servant approached with news. A new message had arrived. This time, the words were clearer. "Lyra, still searching. Promise, return." Her breath caught. She clutched the message tight. It was him. It had to be him. The distance between them was still wide, but the hope inside her grew stronger. Lyra lay awake long into the night, staring at the stars. She imagined Daniel traveling across unknown worlds, fighting storms, crossing dangers, all to keep his word. Her sadness was still there, sharp as ever. She missed him so deeply that her heart ached with every breath. She felt distant from him, trapped on her world while he roamed the stars. But the hope was stronger now. Hope that he had not forgotten her. Hope that the human who had once welcomed her when no one else would still carried her in his heart. She whispered into the night, "Daniel, if you can hear me, I'm waiting. No matter how long it takes, I'll be here." Her voice was small, but steady. Every alien male had refused this small alien princess, but a human had welcomed her. And because of that, she would never let go of hope. Asterisk. The crystal message stayed in Lyra's hands for many nights. She replayed it again and again, though most of it was broken by static. Each time she listened, her heart caught at the sound of his voice. "Lyra, still searching. Promise, return." That was all she heard, but it was enough. He was alive. He had not forgotten her. Somewhere out there, Daniel was still trying to come back. Yet the galaxy was vast, and she was still alone. The palace grew louder with activity in the weeks that followed. More raids came at the borders, and nobles argued endlessly about who should command fleets and who should sit in power. They filled the council chamber with noise, but none of them spoke the words she longed to hear. No one said his name. No one said Daniel. Lyra listened to the debates, but her mind was often elsewhere. She wondered where he slept, what dangers he faced, and whether he missed her as much as she missed him. Every night, she stood on the balcony and looked at the stars. They were cold and endless, yet she searched them anyway, as if her eyes could find the one place where he stood. She tried to keep busy. She worked in the villages again, helping rebuild homes, carrying supplies, listening to the stories of children who had lost everything. "You shouldn't lower yourself," some nobles whispered. "A princess should not walk among the poor." But she ignored them. She remembered how Daniel had sat beside her in the garden, without judgment, without pride. He had taught her that listening was a kind of strength. So she listened, and because of that, her people slowly began to trust her more. Still, every night she returned to her chambers with a heavy heart. She wished Daniel could see what she was trying to do. She wished he could hear her say, "I am not weak anymore, not because I grew strong on my own, but because you believed in me." But the distance between them remained. One evening, she received another message. This time the words were even fewer. Trouble, but still coming. Her fingers shook as she held the crystal. Trouble? Was he hurt? Was he being hunted? She pressed the message to her chest, tears stinging her eyes. "Please be safe," she whispered. "Please keep your promise." Her sadness deepened, but so did her determination. If he was still fighting to reach her, then she would not give up waiting. The days dragged on. Lyra felt distant, not only from Daniel, but from herself. She was growing into someone stronger. Yes, but the loneliness gnawed at her. Sometimes she doubted if she could keep waiting. Sometimes she thought the galaxy was too cruel. That hope itself was foolish. But then she remembered the first time he had looked at her in the hall. No mockery, no scorn, just curiosity, just kindness. Every alien male had refused her. He had not. That memory was a fire that would not go out. Humans were strange, she thought. They were not the strongest, not the richest, not the most powerful in the galaxy. Yet somehow, one human had given her more strength than all her people combined. That was why she still believed. One night, storms rolled across the twin sun skies, lightning flashing through the clouds. Lyra stood by her window, her heart restless. She thought of Daniel again, as always, and her longing spilled over. "I feel so far from you," she whispered. "I don't know how to reach you. I don't know if I ever can. But I will keep waiting, because you gave me hope when I had none." Her voice cracked, but she did not stop. "If you are lost, I will wait until you are found. If you are in trouble, I will believe you will survive. Because you are human, and humans never stop fighting. And because you welcomed me when no one else did." The storm raged outside, but in her heart there was a steady flame. The next day, she gathered her council. "I want ships prepared," she said firmly. "Not for war, but for search. There are voices calling from the stars, and I will not ignore them." The council argued, as always, "This is foolish. The galaxy is too vast. You risk our resources for a ghost." But Lyra stood her ground. "It is not a ghost. It is a promise. And if a human can cross the stars to keep his word, then so can I." The chamber fell silent. The nobles had mocked her once, but they no longer dared. They saw something in her eyes that had not been there before. That night, as she walked once more in the garden, Lyra thought of the future. Perhaps she would not find him right away. Perhaps the search would take years. Perhaps she would never see him again. But even then, she knew she would not regret it, because his welcome. The palace was quiet that evening, though Lyra could not rest. She walked through the long halls, her steps echoing softly. Servants bowed as she passed, but she hardly noticed. Her heart was far away, drifting in the stars with someone she could not see. It had been many months since Daniel left. His messages came rarely, always broken, always short. She held on to each word as though it was a treasure, replaying them over and over. Still searching, trouble, promise, he was alive. She knew that, but he was far, and that distance weighed on her like a stone she could not set down. During the day, she worked harder than ever. She met with her council, gave orders to protect her people, and studied maps of trade routes and pirate hideouts. The more she learned, the more she understood how fragile her world truly was. But at night, when her duties ended, the loneliness returned. She would sit by her balcony or walk the gardens, staring at the twin moons, wishing she could send her voice across the galaxy to him. Sometimes she whispered into the dark, "Do you still think of me?" Other times she clenched her fists and said aloud, "I will find you. I will." Her sadness was heavy, but the fire Daniel had left in her heart did not go out. One day, new trouble arrived. Scouts reported that a hostile fleet was gathering near her borders. The council panicked as always, arguing about strategy and titles. "This is too much for us," one noble said. "We must beg for help from stronger worlds," said another. Lyra stood among them, quiet at first, but then she raised her voice. "No," she said firmly. "We will not beg. We will stand." The council stared at her in shock. She had once been the silent princess, too fragile to speak. But now her eyes were steady, her voice unshaken. She felt Daniel's presence with her, even in absence. "Because you're a person," he had told her once, "and people matter." That belief was stronger than fear. When the meeting ended, she went to her chambers and closed the door. Only then did she allow the weight of it all to fall on her shoulders. She pressed her hands against her face, her chest tight. She wanted him there. She wanted his steady voice to tell her she was not alone. She wanted his laugh to remind her that hope was never foolish. But the room was empty. She lowered her hands slowly and looked at the stars beyond her window. "Daniel," she whispered, "I don't know what you're facing out there, but I will keep walking here. For you, for us." Her sadness pressed down on her, but she carried it. Because humans had shown her that carrying pain did not mean surrendering to it. Weeks passed. The enemy fleet drew nearer. Her people grew restless, afraid. Yet when Lyra walked among them, she did not hide her face. She listened to their fears, spoke words of courage, and promised they would not be abandoned. "She is different now," her guards whispered. "She has fire in her," said the villagers. They could not see the truth, that the fire was not hers alone. It was a flame lit by one human who had welcomed her when no one else would. One evening, a small ship limped into her world's orbit. It carried traders who had passed through many star systems. They brought news rumors of a human traveler who fought to protect colonies too weak to defend themselves. Lyra's heart leapt. Could it be him? The description was vague, but hope stirred in her chest. She asked question after question. The traders could not give clear answers. But one thing was certain. Somewhere in the galaxy, a lone human was fighting for others. Was enough for her. It had to be Daniel. That night, she sat by the balcony again, the crystal messages in her hands. She listened to his broken words once more. Her heart aching. She wanted to send him her own voice. She wanted to say, "I miss you. I am stronger because of you. I will never stop waiting." But she had no way to reach him. The silence stretched across the stars like an endless ocean. Her tears came quietly, but she did not hide them. 4. The first time, she allowed herself to cry not only for sadness, but also for longing. She wiped her face, breathing deep. "If I cannot reach you, she whispered. "Then I will make sure this world is still standing when you return. I will make sure you have a place to come back to." The next morning, she wore her armor, not the heavy kind of her people, but a lighter set, crafted for speed and freedom. It did not make her taller or stronger, but it reminded her that she had chosen her own path. She trained with her guards, clumsy at first, but refusing to give up. Each fall, each mistake, she rose again. "Why do you keep trying?" One guard asked, confused. Lyra smiled faintly, brushing dust from her arm. "Because someone once told me I was stronger than I believed. I want to prove he was right." The days of waiting grew longer, but her hope did not break, even in her deepest sadness. She reminded herself, humans did not give up. Daniel had promised he would return. That promise was her anchor, her guide, her shield, and so she waited, not as the fragile princess she once was, but as someone who carried fire in her heart. Every alien male had refused this small alien princess, but a human had welcomed her. And because of that, even across the distance of stars, she refused to let go of hope. Asterisk, the air in the council chamber was heavy with fear. Reports from the border grew worse each day. The enemy fleet had almost doubled in size, their war banners spreading across nearby systems like storm clouds. Lyra listened in silence as her advisors argued. "We cannot fight them," one shouted. "We must surrender before they reach us." Another insisted. Their words made her heart ache. They wanted to give up before even trying. Yet she did not shout back. She simply stood, her voice calm but firm. "We will not surrender," she said. "Not while I live." The room went quiet. Even those who doubted her could not miss the strength in her eyes. But when the meeting ended and the chamber emptied, Lyra was left alone. She pressed her hands against the table, lowering her head. For all her brave words, her heart whispered a different truth. "Daniel, I need you here. Why are you so far away?" At night, she walked the palace gardens again. The moon shone brightly, casting silver light across the trees and flowers. She remembered the way Daniel had once stood with her in this very place, telling her stories of Earth. He had spoken with such warmth, such belief in the simple value of a person. She could almost hear his laugh in the wind. She could almost see his shadow beside hers. But he was not there. The sadness was sharp that night, sharper than before. She sank to her knees in the grass, clutching the crystal message device in her hands. The last message he had sent was weeks old. Static filled most of it. Only one word had come clear. Waiting. Was he waiting for her? Or was he telling her to wait for him? She did not know. She only knew the distance between them felt like a wound that would not heal. Days turned into weeks. Scouts returned with more bad news. The enemy was advancing faster than expected. Villages near the border had already been raided. Her people looked to her for answers. They needed hope, and so she gave it to them, even while her own heart felt empty. She ordered defenses built, trained new guards, and rode out herself to speak with frightened farmers and families. "You are not alone," she told them again and again. "We will protect this land. We will not bend." They believed her, not because she was strong, but because she did not hide her fear. She walked among them, as Daniel once walked beside her, and that made them trust. Yet when she returned to her chambers at night, she still felt the crushing weight of silence. One evening, after a long day of meetings and training, she sat by her window again. She whispered into the stars, as she often did. "Daniel, do you hear me? Do you know I still wait? Do you know I still believe?" The stars gave no answer. The silence pressed harder than before, not her eyes stung with tears. But she clenched her fists. "No, I will not let this silence break me." For humans had taught her something. Sadness did not mean weakness. Distance did not mean the end. A promise could still live, even if it was buried in silence. The next morning, soldiers came rushing into the palace. "Princess," one cried, "a signal from deep space." A human vessel was sighted near the trade routes. Her heart almost stopped. Could it be him? She demanded every detail. The description was small, incomplete, just a lone ship fending off pirates. But her heart whispered the truth. It must be Daniel. Who else would be out there, fighting so stubbornly for others? For the first time in months, her sadness lifted into something brighter, hope burning like a sunrise. She went to her balcony again that night, looking at the sky. "I don't know where you are," she whispered. "I don't know when you'll reach me. But I will keep standing here. I will not give up. I will not let go." Her tears came again, but this time they were not only of sorrow. They were of strength, because even if Daniel was far away, even if she could not see him, his presence was inside her. His fire had become hers. The enemy fleet kept drawing closer. Soon, the greatest battle her people had ever faced would come. Her advisors still doubted, still feared. But when they looked at her, they saw something different. "She stands as if someone walks beside her," one whispered. "She believes as if hope itself is her weapon," said another. And they were right. Because even though she was alone, she was not truly alone. She carried with her the memory of one human who had looked at her when all others had turned away. One human who had welcomed her. That night, before she slept, she whispered the same words she had whispered every night. "Since he left, Daniel, wherever you are, don't give up." "Because I won't." Her sadness still lived inside her,